The Gunlance in Monster Hunter Now is a very strong weapon with explosive power. We're going to break down this weapon and take a look at how the Gunlance actually works. We're going to take a look at the basic controls, the different types of Gunlances, and the best combos for each type. Now, the way I like to look at the Gunlance is basically it's a lance but with a gun attached to it. You still use a shield to block attacks, but this time your source of damage is not from counters, but from shelling. Shelling is the term we use when we fire the Gunlance, and you deal the most damage using this mechanic. Let's quickly go through the basic controls of the Gunlance. On your screen, you will see two things below your health bar. You will see how many shells you have and your worm stake shot. The number of shells you have will vary depending on the type of Gunlance you're using. These two things will be the key to the Gunlance's explosive damage. When you tap, you will fire the Gunlance and use up one shell. Tap 3 times consecutively and the third shot will be the worm stake. It will fire a pin that will stick to the monster and deal a ton of tick damage before exploding. Now when you run out of shells, you need to reload. To reload them, you can simply tap to perform a quick reload when all the shells are empty. But this quick reload does not reload the worm stake shot. To reload the worm stake, you have to perform the full reload. You do this by tapping and holding, then swiping down. This will reload the worm stake shot and your shells as well. Swipe up to perform a lateral thrust, and like the lance, you can chain it 3 times. After a lateral thrust, you can tap to follow it up with a shell. This move also moves you forward, so it's a great way to approach the monster. Tap and hold to block attacks using the shield, and while you tap and hold, you're also charging up a shell, and letting go will fire the charged shell. While guarding, you can also swipe up to perform a rising slash. After the rising slash, you can tap to shoot a shell upwards, or you can swipe up again to perform an overhead smash. After the overhead smash, you can tap to follow up with the full burst. This move will use up all your shells in one powerful shot, but you can only do this after an overhead smash. Lastly, the Gunlance's special move is the worm stake cannon. Your hunter will charge up the Gunlance and fire a huge explosion. With the basics out of the way, let's talk about the different types of Gunlances and the best combos for each. So there are 3 types of Gunlances: normal, wide, and long. Normal type Gunlances have the most shells. They come with 5 shells in total, making them the perfect Gunlance for the full burst playstyle. One full burst can fire 5 shells simultaneously, resulting in huge damage. But to balance out normal type Gunlances, their single shell damage is low and the worm stake shot damage is only average. So when using normal type Gunlances, you don't want to be firing single shells. You always want to have 5 shells ready when you perform a full burst combo for optimal damage. So the best combo for normal type Gunlances is this. Perform a rising slash into overhead smash into full burst. After a full burst, you have the option to dodge or to continue the combo by swiping up again to perform a wide sweep, and then tap to follow up with the worm stake shot for even more insane damage. The trick to maximizing your damage with normal type Gunlances is knowing when to quick reload. When you need to reload your shells, do this combo instead. Perform a rising slash, then tap to seamlessly quick reload all your shells. Then swipe up to continue to the overhead slam into full burst. This is the most efficient way to reload your shells without interrupting your combo. You don't need to stop your offense just to reload your shells. But do take note that quick reloads do not reload your worm stake shot. Next up is the wide type Gunlance. Wide-type gunlances have the lowest number of shells, coming in at only 2 shells. So clearly not the best gunlance for a full burst playstyle. They make up for this low ammo count by having the highest single shell damage and the highest worm stake shot damage. So the combo you always want to be using is the lateral thrust into shelling combo. So thrust and fire is the game plan for wide-type gunlances. After firing 2 shells, you can follow up with the worm stake shot. Then, all you gotta do is a full reload and rinse and repeat the same combos. You can also do the rising slash combo without doing the full burst to shoot out the worm stake shot. Wide-type gunlances have a fairly simple game plan when you compare it to normal-type gunlances. Then lastly, the long-type gunlance. Long-type gunlances come with 3 shells. They have the longest range out of all the gunlances and they can shoot monsters from a medium range. These long-type gunlances have the highest charge shelling damage, so the best strategy is to spam these charge shots. You can just stay in the sidelines and take pot shots from afar. This is probably the best weapon type if you want to play while giving as little attention as possible. All you need to do is tap and hold, then fire. It's also relatively safe because while charging, you have your shield up to block attacks. It's a very simple weapon to use. So your playstyle will greatly depend on the type of gunlance you're using. If you want to go full burst, make sure to craft normal type gunlances. And if you want to play like the lance and add some extra sauce to your attacks, then craft wide type gunlances. If you're tired of the bow and you want a shield, then craft the long type gunlance. For skills, the new artillery skill will be a must-have in every gunlance build. This skill will increase the damage of your shells. Shells are a bit tricky. Regular attack buffing skills do not affect shells, so offensive guard and burst do not affect shelling damage. Artillery is one of the few skills that actually buff shelling damage, so you must have it in your builds. Another skill that buffs shelling damage is sneak attack. Sneak attack buffs damage in general as long as you're hitting the monster from behind, so shelling actually gets buffed by sneak attack. Depending on your playstyle, you can either have guard or evade extender for quality of life skills. Guard will help you block attacks and minimize chip damage, or you can add evade extender to help with your mobility. Artful Dodger would also be a great skill to have in normal type gunlance builds. When you pull off a perfect dodge, swipe up immediately and you will skip right into the overhead smash into full burst combo. Perfect dodging also gives you 1 extra shell. I must say that's pretty good. For long type gunlances, you might want to consider adding focus into your builds. It will help speed up charging shells. It's also important to note that shells are not affected by affinity, so our crit builds will not be effective with the gunlance. Shells also ignore monster armor, so shells will always deal the same damage regardless of where you hit the monster. Take Basarios for example. If you hit Basarios' head when it's not orange hot, your attacks will bounce. But shelling ignores all that and still deals optimal damage regardless of monster armor. In mainline games, shelling takes away a huge chunk of the gunlance's sharpness, so you always have to sharpen and sharpen your weapon. But in Monster Hunter Now, the gunlance doesn't have that weakness. It will always output consistently high damage. The gunlance's damage output in Monster Hunter Now is insane. I'm only using grade 4 weapons, but I can easily take on 6-star monsters. The gunlance is strong, but I still prefer the counter playstyle of the lance. Countering monster attacks is simply too satisfying, but the full burst combo of the gunlance is a close second. But that's it for this gunlance guide. If you want to learn more about Monster Hunter Now Season 2, then be sure to check out this video right here.